Hi there. My name is Kane Williamson. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority, otherwise known as the ATL. And we are the entity that operates the regional express system that we're going to talk to you about today. I'm also joined by Tiffany McCall, who is ATL's Director of Communications, and Taylor Cox, who has been supporting us with the technical analysis on the project. So we're going to step you through a presentation of the set of recommendations that have come out of our Redefining the Ride Express 2.0 effort, and then Tiffany's going to moderate for us a question and answer session. So we'll just dive right in. We will dive right in.
Okay.
So just to give you guys an idea of what we're going to talk about today, we are going to do a little primer on the express bus service that we're currently operating. I expect that some of you are familiar with it, but just in case, we want to sort of lay the groundwork there. We'll also talk a little bit about how the Atlanta region is growing and changing, and then we'll talk about the pandemic related impacts to our express bus network and to the way folks are getting to and from work these days. And then we'll talk about the set of recommendations that have come out of this study. And those recommendations will come in 3 phases, and we'll talk about each phase individually. And then, of course, we'll take some questions and answers. And at the end, we'll encourage you to take a survey that we have online if you haven't already done so. So just to ground us here, the express bus service that we're offering today, we currently have 27 bus routes that operate out of 27 park and ride lots across the 13-county metro Atlanta region. And we have 55 bus stops in downtown, midtown, and perimeter. So our service is currently focused on getting folks from the suburban areas of the region into those 3 major office employment centers of downtown, midtown, and perimeter. And this has really been in response over the past 20 years or so to the way people have traditionally commuted to and from work. And over that time, we have seen the Atlanta region expand, and of course, it continues to expand. Just for example, in the last year, we've added about 67,000 people to the region, which is the size of a small city, such as Dothan, Alabama, or maybe even Portland, Maine. And we expect by 2050 that the region will reach about 7.9 million people, continued growth to get us to the place of a size of a region that's currently Chicago or so. So we do expect to continue to grow. And that growth will bring with it growth in employment as well as growth in population. And what we have seen is some of the most substantial growth in the region's employment over the past couple of years have been related to professional services and healthcare and the technology sectors. And so those sectors such as healthcare, where folks have to be at a place to do the job and are unable to telework, for instance, is you'll see that crop up again as we go through the presentation. And so as the region continues to grow and expand and employment and commuting patterns continue to change, it's important for us to think about how the service that we offer continues to adapt to meet the needs of the region as well. So I've teased this idea of post-pandemic realities, and so let's just talk about that a little bit. During the height of the pandemic, our express service ridership dropped substantially. And we have seen a resurgence in the ridership, but we're still at about 30% of pre-pandemic levels. And this is largely attributable to the shift in the way people are working. Obviously, during the pandemic, most folks were working from home, other than those folks who had to come to a frontline job, like in the healthcare sector or logistics facilities or hospitality facilities. But this remote work and hybrid work schedules has persisted even after the pandemic, and we see no signs of that changing. So we expect that this remote and hybrid work schedule is going to continue to persist. And so this obviously means that we need to rethink the services that we're providing and be a little more flexible in the way we're providing services to get people to their destinations. And another thing that we would mention here is that the pandemic has had impacts on our transit funding and budgeting. As our ridership goes down, so does our fare revenue, which has an impact on our budget. And it's also important to mention that a substantial portion of our funding comes from the state's budget. And in this last cycle of the legislature, we saw a funding cut from the legislature. So we now need to think about how the levels of service that we provide meet our new financial realities as well. So let's just talk a little bit about what redefining the ride is. And so we set out on this study with a set of goals to, like I mentioned, adjust our service patterns and intensities to meet the levels of demand that we're currently experiencing, and to improve the productivity of that service. And then think also about how the service might need to change, what new markets it might need to serve as a result of the changing realities. We will have, as I mentioned, recommendations in 3 phases. The first will focus on improving the efficiency of the service that we're offering, and the second 2 phases will focus on how we might add service back, and then expand service again and refocus it. So phase 1, the key elements of phase 1, we're looking at how we will either eliminate underutilized routes and underutilized park and ride lots, or think about how we might sort of change the origins and destinations of those routes to better serve better connect to existing services such as the MARTA rail stations, and then to more efficiently produce or to more efficiently deliver service when we get into downtown and midtown in terms of the reduction of the number of stops that we're actually making currently. So to get to a little more specifics, as I mentioned, we have 27 routes today. And on those 27 routes, we offer a total of 197 trips on a daily basis. And the proposed changes would get us to a place where we're offering 94 total trips over the course of the day, and 48 of those trips would connect or terminate at a MARTA rail station. And we'll show you a little bit more about that in a second. We would go from 27 park and ride lots to 18 park and ride lots. And we would reduce the number of our stops in downtown, midtown, and perimeter from 55 to 12. And that last box at the bottom of the screen there just sort of gives you an idea of how well utilized the amount of service we're offering today is. So currently, about 16% of the number of seats that we operate on a daily basis are being consumed. So you can see it's important for us to rethink this system and increase the efficiency of what we are delivering. And if we maintain the same number of average daily riders once we've implemented the proposed changes, we would change from a 16% consumption rate to a 35% consumption rate. And this is sort of where all of this is headed. So this map, don't get too involved in this map, because we're going to take you through these changes on a quarter by quarter basis. But this is sort of just to give you a high level overview of the changes that we would expect to see. So you can see that each quarter is going to experience some change. And as I said, Taylor in a second will take you through each of those changes in detail, but just to give you a high level perspective here. And this also, please don't hurt your eyes here, but this is just a visual representation of the change in the number of stops that we'll see post implementation of the recommended service changes in phase 1. We will be reducing the number of stops substantially in downtown and midtown. So now Taylor's going to walk you through the changes across the entire system, starting at 12 o'clock on the clock face with the Georgia 400 corridor and moving clockwise around the system. So Taylor?
Yep, thank you, Kane. And I guess before I begin, I'm not going to go too far into the weeds of these, just kind of keep on the quarter level of what we've recommended. So I will mention on the website, the agency's website, this gets into a little more granular level. That way you can navigate through each and kind of zoom in and see the changes that we're proposing if you have any additional questions. So as Kane mentions, starting at 12 o'clock, we'll just again go around the hands, main corridors in the area. So starting with the Georgia 400 corridor, as you can see, there's currently operated days. There's two routes coming between the Cumming Park and Ride, the kind of the perimeter area, and then downtown. So again, as Kane mentioned throughout the beginning of this presentation, the goal is efficiency here. So we're trying to maintain this level of service to the main stops that we have in the corridor. So our recommendation is to operate this as one route, streamline it with the trips and kind of repurposing those resources and doing so with the schedule. But between the Cumming Park and Ride and the Dunwoody station, kind of focusing on the MARTA rail station in this corridor. Another main component to this, an additional, I guess, a good improvement is we're adding service to the Alpharetta area, serving the Wynwood Park and Ride. So it'll kind of give it more of a regional access to jobs and other services in the area. Next slide, please. The I-85 North Corridor, which goes from downtown all the way out to Hamilton Mill, also serves the Mall of Georgia, Sugarloaf Mills, Tequila. So a significant amount of routes in this on this corridor, and so our recommendation is to streamline this kind of with the trips in terms of the scheduling. But this will make the much more understanding for new riders. It'll be easier to navigate this corridor in terms of the routes. So our recommendation is to operate one route in this corridor to serve the Hamilton Mill, Mall of Georgia, Sugarloaf Mills, and end of line being the Civic Center in this corridor. You'll notice on the existing network, Tequila is eliminated, so the folks will just have to drive a little bit further into Sugarloaf Mills, and I'll get to that a little more later on the slides. Next slide, please. US 78 corridor. This is served by one route currently for the 419. It's a streamlined route. Our recommendation is since it bypasses a main rail station served by MARTA, being Indian Creek, our recommendation is to streamline this and to truncate it or being the end of line at the Indian Creek MARTA rail station. You'll see also that the existing route serves Snellville, Huot, and Stone Mountain Park and Rides. So our recommendation, based off of utilization at the park and rides, for instance, vehicles that serve it on a current basis, we've recommended as Huot as the main park and ride for this corridor. So between Huot and Indian Creek will be the current alignment or the recommended alignment. Next slide, please. The I-20 East corridor. This is a heavily utilized corridor in the service, so we try to maintain connections for the most part of that. As you can see, currently there's two routes that operate in the corridor today. There's also an additional route, which I'll get to in a minute. It goes up to Perimeter. It's the 428. I'll talk about those two in a little bit. There's three of them. So this currently has two routes to go to downtown, from East Conyers, West Conyers, and Panola Road Park and Rides. Our recommendation is, again, based off utilizations, to eliminate the East Conyers and start the route at West Conyers and then to Panola Road and the end of line being the Civic Center. Again, one route. Next slide, please. The I-75 South US 41 corridor. So there's a couple routes that operate in this vicinity. Currently have 5 routes today. A couple come from Jonesboro Park and Ride, the Hampton Park and Ride as well, and obviously you can see a few more that go from McDonough, Stockbridge, and Brandsmart. So we've recommended and there's an exciting addition to this alignment here. So there's 2 routes that we'll be recommending. One goes from Jonesboro to Civic Center being the end of line, and the other one would be McDonough, Stockbridge to Civic Center, and that being end of line. In terms of the schedule, every other trip will serve the College Park station, which is a great improvement for folks trying to access the airport and other jobs in the area. So I think this is a great improvement for the system. Next slide, please. The I-85 South corridor, as Kay mentioned earlier on, is another heavy corridor with many employment sectors, and future job opportunities. So again, we try to maintain services, but also relying on the MARTA service and the rail station at College Park. So As you can see here, this would be the from Noonan to College Park Station, same one route. There is also a Union City Park ride that's currently in service today. It's underutilized, but there's also a new one that we're recommending service to just south of that being the Fairburn Park ride. So this will be a nice new service from Noonan, Fairburn, and College Park, which provide more access to the airport and other jobs in the area. Next slide, please. The I-20 West and SR6 corridor. This has two routes. The 463. This is the southern route, which is West Douglas, the Douglas Multimodal Transit Center, and then to downtown. And the 476 is the one coming from the north. It'll be the Hiram Park ride, Powder Springs, and to downtown. So we're recommending again two routes. Being the end of line, the AG Ohms rail station being served by MARTA, and then we're recommending to based off utilization just to recommend elimination of the Hiram. So just I think couple additional miles to Powder Springs, which is has more utilization and it's a little bit newer park and ride. So these are two routes in this corridor. Next slide, please. I guess last but not least, this is the another heavily utilized corridor with quite a few routes. As you can see, there's 5 routes in the corridor serving from Ackworth, Hickory Grove, Town Center, Big Shanty, and Woodstock. They all kind of traverse the same direction as well as being end of line downtown. So our recommendation is to streamline this corridor, repurpose the resources and other routes and network in terms of the schedules and some improvements that Kane will get to in a little bit. But the recommendation is to streamline this end of line being the Civic Center, and the starting line will be the Town Center, Big Shanty. Another improvement to this is it will also serve the Marietta area. So another great improvement for this this corridor. Next slide, please. And this slide, so this kind of covers what I mentioned a few moments ago. There's 3 routes just based off, as Kane mentioned earlier on, before I started introducing some of these network changes. The corridor utilization on these is quite poor if you look at it overall throughout the year. So we've tried to do our best to improve some efficiencies, and by doing so, we've tried to repurpose those resources to other routes in the network. These 3 routes we've recommended for elimination, and as you can see, kind of the utilization on these routes is quite low. So again, before I hand it back off to Kane, just a reminder is if you want to get a little more detail of the corridor by corridor network changes, please feel free to zoom into or head over to the Xpress site, the agency site, and you'll be able to zoom in and kind of see some of the network changes one by one, and hopefully you can answer any additional questions you have. I'll hand it back to Kane. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yep.
I appreciate that. So that is a pretty good overview of the efficiency changes we're recommending in phase 1. So we'll talk now about phase 2 and the potential re-addition of some service on the new base layer that will come after phase 1 is implemented. Phase 2 is really about thinking about where we could add reverse commute to the remainder of the routes. And for those of you who might not be familiar with reverse commute, it's essentially sort of thinking about how folks who live in town might need to access employment centers in the suburbs. Right now, we're focused on getting folks from the suburbs into downtown, midtown, and perimeter. And phase 2 is essentially thinking about how we would provide bi-directional service on those routes. And so you can see an example here of what routes we would be proposing to provide that reverse commute on. Those routes that are highlighted in yellow on the map are the ones where we would potentially be able to add reverse commute if we get to the place where we have funding enough to add back service to the system. We'd be focused really on offering reverse commute on 7 routes to serve the Marietta area, Alpharetta, Sugarloaf Mills, Conyers, McDonough, Fairburn College Park, and Fulton Industrial Boulevard areas. So phase 3 is sort of looking at that set of in-person employment centers that I talked a little bit about before. This is really looking at the new markets in the region where folks don't have an option except to come to a job in person. And so really being able to serve those folks who need to get to a workplace, as well as the businesses in those workplaces. And so we would essentially be proposing a set of new routes and new connections to serve those routes, bi-directional routes, I mean here. So at a high level, you can see here on the left side, on the right side of the screen, where those routes would be proposed. Those are the routes in green. And then over on the left side of the screen, you can see essentially where we would be, what those areas would be, so where they'd be serving, what the stops along the way would be. It's important to point out here that the stops along these new routes would continue to be limited in order to make sure that we continue to offer express bus, commuter bus service. I'll give you just a second to review this before I advance the slide. And so if we put all of this together, you can see the map on the right essentially represents in red represents those portions of the existing system that are being proposed to be eliminated. The green routes represent the new in-person employment center focused routes, which would be two-way routes, bi-directional routes. And then the yellow on the map represents routes that would continue to operate and potentially have reverse commute added to them. And so today we're operating 27 routes. If we go ahead and implement phase one, the efficiency services, we would end up with 10 routes. And then phase two, we would not increase the number of routes if we just did the reverse commute. It would just be adding reverse commute to some of those routes. But if we implemented the new market routes, we would eventually get to a total of 17 routes. The number of stops, that second line, we would go from 55 routes currently to 15 after phase one, increase to 16 if we add the reverse commute, and then up to a number of 22 if we add the new market routes as well. Currently, we don't have any routes to have bi-directional service or reverse commute. So if we into phase two, you could see we would get to 7 initially, and then potentially 14. And then the park and ride lots, we would go from 27 currently to a total of 18 across the board. I want to emphasize here a couple of things. The phase two, implementation of phase two does depend on us being able to find some funding to add service back after we have reduced the levels of service currently. And the other thing that I want to emphasize is that there will be more detailed planning to follow this effort. So this effort is really meant to set the vision and direction, not to be specific necessarily about what the actual timing of the routes would be or the specific routing of the routes would be. So there will be a second set of planning that comes after this, is more detailed and operational in nature, and that will come also with a set with a required amount of public engagement to make sure that everyone is well informed and has the opportunity to weigh in on what those potential changes would be.